You don't forget the exact moment everything starts to fall apart. Not really. People pretend like the collapse happened suddenly, like one big dramatic explosion you couldn't have predicted. But I saw it. I saw it coming in fragments, like a slow leak that finally floods the whole damn house. The night it started, we were at a dinner party, surrounded by people we barely knew and wine I couldn't pronounce. She looked beautiful. Not dressed up beautiful. Not the kind you wear for other people, but the kind she saves for when she wants to feel like herself. Hair pulled back in that loose, confident knot. Lips that same burnt orange she knows looks better than red on her skin. She didn't wear it for me, I realize now. She wore it for him. Darren. He was hosting. Her ex. We'd dated for like a minute in college, she had said, brushing it off like it didn't mean anything. He always understood me, though. That was the part she added when she thought I wasn't listening. I heard it. I always hear the things she doesn't say loud enough. I didn't want to go. I had work. I was tired. But something about the way she said his name, like it still belonged to some part of her past she hadn't let go of, made me put on a jacket and grab a bottle of wine from the cabinet like some dumbass husband trying to play along. I wish I had trusted my gut. I wish I had stayed home. From the moment we walked in, she was different, lighter. I hadn't seen her laugh like that in months, maybe years. The way she leaned into conversations, the way her eyes crinkled like they used to when we first met. And the worst part was, none of that was for me. She barely touched me all night. Her hand rested near my elbow once, but only because she was reaching past me for a glass. She didn't look back when she walked toward him. She didn't need to. He was charming in that careless way creative men often are. Charisma, like it was poured into him at birth. He told stories that didn't need a point. He made jokes that weren't funny, but people laughed anyway. And she was right there, eyes locked, smiling with a kind of ease I hadn't seen on her face in a long, long time. It wasn't even jealousy I felt, not at first. It was recognition. I'd seen that version of her before, when we first started dating. When we stayed up until 3 a.m. just talking about nothing. When she'd send me playlists with notes like, "This made me think of you." That version of her hadn't looked at me in years. And there it was, suddenly alive again. Only now it was standing across the room, wrapped around the sentences of a man I'd never met before that night. They touched, just briefly, a laugh, a hand on her waist. She didn't pull away. She didn't even flinch. That's when it turned. Something inside me cracked in half, so quietly that even I didn't hear it first. I smiled through the rest of the evening, shook hands, thanked the hosts, made jokes with strangers, but I was already bleeding. On the drive home, she was quiet. I asked her if she had fun. "Yeah," she said. "It was nice. It was nostalgic." She hesitated on that word. She thought I wouldn't catch it. I always catch it. I nodded. Kept driving. Her phone lit up once. She turned it face down. We didn't talk after that. She went to bed early. I sat in the dark for another hour, replaying every look, every laugh, every touch. I told myself I was being paranoid. I told myself I was just tired, that they were just old friends catching up. But something about the way she smiled at him, God, that smile, I hadn't seen that in so long. It wasn't the act of cheating that broke me. It was realizing she had already left, emotionally, long before anything physical happened. She had found something in him, an echo of herself, maybe a mirror to who she used to be. And somewhere along the way, I'd stopped being that for her. I just didn't know it until now. It always starts with little things. That's the part no one tells you about betrayal. It doesn't begin with moaning in a hotel room or secret weekend getaways. It begins in the in-between, the quiet omissions, the subtle shifts, the things that don't look like lies until you realize they've stacked themselves into something that can bury you. After that dinner party, I noticed she started humming again. That used to mean she was in a good mood, back when I was the reason for it. But now it came at odd times. Folding laundry, dry her hair, staring into the fridge with no real intention of cooking anything. And it wasn't the usual tunes either. It was different, lighter, songs I didn't recognize. I asked her once what it was. "Oh, nothing. Just a song stuck in my head." A week later, I heard the same melody while walking past the guest room. I poked my head in. Her laptop was open, a playlist queued up on Spotify. The title read, "Old Days, New Eyes." I clicked on it when she was in the shower. The first song was the same one she was humming. The third was a cover of that Damien Rice track she used to play back in college, when we were just learning how to live together without killing each other. And the sixth? It was a track Darren had posted on his Instagram story a few days earlier. Some obscure acoustic nonsense with too many chords and not enough melody. I didn't say anything. What was there to say? Hey, I noticed you're curating a mixtape for your emotional affair. Care to walk me through the track list? No. I swallowed it like I had swallowed everything else. My pride, my suspicion, my growing certainty that something was happening right in front of me, and I was being too damn civilized to confront it. I started paying attention to her phone habits, the way she turned it face down during dinner, the sudden need to wear earbuds when she cleaned. She started taking longer showers and always locked the bathroom door now. Once I knocked, needing to grab something from the cabinet. She opened it just a crack and said, "Can it wait?" No explanation. "No, I'm busy." Just that sharp edge in her voice that dared me to ask again. It was around then that I stopped sleeping properly. I wake up at 3:42 a.m. like clockwork, heart pounding, brain running through every detail from the last few days. Who she texted, what time she got home, what she said or didn't say when I asked about her day. One night, I got up, sat in the living room with just the dim stove light behind me, and opened her laptop. I hadn't planned to. I didn't even know her password anymore. But I tried the name of her favorite book, the one she told me she always wanted to name our daughter after. It worked. That stung more than I expected. The screen lit up, and I felt like a thief. But wasn't something already stolen? She'd left her email open. Nothing glaring. Just a message with the subject, that night. That laugh. I clicked it. It was short. 2 lines. I'm still thinking about it. You haven't changed at all. In the best way. No name. No signature. But I didn't need one. I closed the laptop, walked to the kitchen, and poured myself a drink I hadn't touched in almost 6 months. I stared at the amber glow in the glass and thought about the way her voice softened when she said his name. Darren. Like it was a secret she still wanted to believe in. Like he represented some version of her she had left behind and wanted to find again. I don't know when it happened, but somewhere between raising a family, paying bills, and arguing about who forgot to take the trash out, I stopped being the man who made her feel seen. And he had been waiting in the shadows of memory, ready to pick up where they left off. The next morning, she kissed me on the cheek like everything was normal. Said she had a late client meeting, told me not to wait up. I nodded, smiled. Let her lie to my face because I wasn't ready to hear it out loud. And as she walked out the door, humming that same damn song, I felt the weight of the silence she left behind. Not absence. Not yet. But absence waiting to be born. At IT was a Thursday night when she came home with the scent of a different cologne on her skin. Not strong. Subtle, like it had brushed past her neck in a whisper. Maybe a hug. Maybe more. She walked in like nothing had changed, dropped her keys in a bowl by the door, kicked off her shoes. I was sitting at the dining table, pretending to be immersed in work, laptop open, half a spreadsheet on the screen. But I wasn't doing a damn thing except waiting. Watching. Taking mental notes like some quiet detective who didn't want to solve the case because the answer would cost too much. She smiled when she saw me. Not the kind of smile that says I missed you. Just polite. Distant. Long day. I asked, trying to sound casual. She shrugged. Draining. Back-to-back sessions. I'm fried. She was a therapist. That's the irony. She listened for a living. Knew how to ask questions that made people unravel. But lately, she'd stopped listening to me. Or maybe I'd stopped talking. Either way, we were both just playing house now. I watched her walk into the kitchen, pull out a bottle of sparkling water, and drink straight from it. Her blouse clung to her back in all the ways I used to notice before routine replaced curiosity. Her bra strap was twisted, something that used to drive her crazy. She'd fix it in the mirror without even looking. But now it sat crooked on her shoulder, like she didn't care who noticed. Or maybe someone else already had. She didn't kiss me good night anymore. Just a quick, I'm exhausted. And then she'd disappear into the bedroom, sometimes locking the door under the excuse of needing deep sleep without interruptions. I never pressed, but my body knew before my mind did. You can't live next to someone for over a decade without feeling the shift in their energy. Even her silence had changed shape. It used to be comfortable like old slippers in warm light. Now it was sharp around the edges. She used to reach for me in her sleep. Now she curled away. I started paying attention to little inconsistencies. The way she never plugged in her phone on the nightstand anymore, always left it in her bag. The sudden interest in running. Morning jogs, she claimed, cleared her mind. I used to wake up when the door clicked behind her. Once I followed, stayed a block behind as she ran the trail near the old park. She didn't jog like someone trying to meditate. She jogged like someone burning off adrenaline, like her body was chasing or being chased by something. I watched her stop suddenly, pull out her phone, and smile at the screen. She typed something, lingered, then smiled again. I turned around and walked home. That night, I stared at the ceiling in the dark, hearing her breathe softly beside me. And I realized I wasn't heartbroken. Not yet. I was holding my breath, waiting for the official death certificate. But the grief had already started. It was in the way I didn't ask where she was going when she dressed up on a Tuesday. It was in the way I said, "I love you" less, not because I didn't mean it, but because I didn't know if she'd say it back. It was in the way I started answering questions with "whatever you think," because I was tired of pretending my opinion still mattered. We were still sleeping in the same bed, but in different countries. She'd left me without packing a bag. And the sick part is I was starting to get used to it. I was adjusting to the ache. That's the dangerous part of betrayal. It doesn't kill you all at once. It makes you slowly forget what wholeness ever felt like. And I was starting to forget. That next weekend, she said she needed to get away for a bit. Said a colleague had a cabin she could use, just a night or two, to recharge. I didn't even ask who the colleague was. I just nodded, helped her pack, told her to drive safe. I hugged her at the door. She hugged back like someone practicing detachment. When the car pulled out of the driveway, I didn't cry. I just stood there for a while, staring at the emptiness of the space she left behind. No suitcase, no goodbye kiss, just the scent of a man I didn't know, lingering faintly on the sleeve of the jacket she forgot to take. She was gone for 2 nights. Said she needed the space. No cell service, she warned. Don't worry if you don't hear from me. I just need to unplug. But I did worry. Not in the panicked, anxious way that keeps you pacing. No, it was worse than that. I worried in silence, like a man watching his house burn down from across the street, knowing he couldn't save a damn thing. The night she left, I didn't sleep. I sat on the couch with an untouched glass of whiskey and the TV playing something I didn't register. It was just noise, something to fill the space where her voice used to be. I kept looking at my phone, not expecting a message, but hoping the lack of one would feel less final with enough distractions. It didn't. The second day, I started going through photos. I don't know why. Maybe to prove to myself that it had once been real, that the laughter in those images had existed outside the frame. Our wedding, our first apartment, the blurry picture of her standing barefoot in the kitchen, hair a mess, holding a mug like it was the most sacred thing in the world. I used to look at her like she was the answer to every question I hadn't learned how to ask. Now I looked at her like a puzzle, missing the edge pieces. On the third morning, she came back. Her hair was damp, pulled back. No makeup. She walked in quietly, like she just stepped out for coffee. No dramatic entrance. No apology. She dropped her bag by the stairs, looked at me sitting at the table, and said, "Hey," like it was just another Tuesday. I looked up, nodded. "How was the cabin?" She hesitated just long enough. "Good. Peaceful." She poured herself a glass of water and drank it in slow sips, avoiding my eyes. That was her tell. She never lied well when she had to look you in the face. I wanted to ask if she'd been with him. I wanted to say his name and watch her flinch. But I didn't, because part of me already knew, and the other part wasn't sure I could survive hearing her confirm it. Instead, I said, "You hungry?" She shook her head. "Just tired." Then she went upstairs and closed the door. Not a slam, just a soft, final click. That night, I opened her laptop again. I don't know what I was hoping to find. Maybe nothing. Maybe proof. Maybe some tiny detail I could use to piece together the full picture of what we'd become. Her messages were open. Email, Facebook, Instagram. I wasn't looking for sexts or declarations of love. I was looking for the kind of messages that tell the truth without saying it outright. And I found one. A thread, buried in the archive. Darren, I can't stop thinking about how easy it felt to talk to you again. Her reply, you always saw the parts of me he missed. I sat there staring at that line for what felt like an hour. He, that was me. The subject, the placeholder, the man she used to love, and now only referenced in third person. I was a shadow in her conversations. A pause between the life she had and the one she wanted back. There was more, of course. Plans to meet again. Little jokes. References to songs they used to play. She had sent him a picture. Just a view of the lake. Trees. A fire pit. But I knew what it meant. She wanted to share that moment with him. Not with me. And that was worse than any physical affair. It was emotional treason. I closed the laptop and sat in the dark again, this time without distraction. Just me, the weight of her absence, and the cruel echo of her voice in my memory. You always saw the parts of me he missed. That sentence haunted me, because it wasn't just a betrayal, it was a eulogy. The marriage wasn't bleeding out. It was already cold, and I was the one still performing CPR on something that had flatlined months ago. Around midnight, I walked into our bedroom. She was asleep, or pretending to be. Her back to me, knees tucked up like a child trying to disappear under the covers. I watched her for a while. Not out of love, out of grief. The kind of grief that doesn't even have tears left. Just wait. I wanted to wake her up and ask her to tell me everything. I wanted to scream, to cry, to demand why. But I didn't, because deep down, I knew the truth. And the truth is never loud. It just settles in your bones and lives there quietly, waiting for you to decide what to do next. The morning after felt like nothing had changed, which somehow made it worse. She made coffee. I made toast. We moved around the kitchen like co-workers in a break room. Cordial, silent, deeply uncomfortable with each other's presence. She asked if I needed the car. I said no. She said she had a session downtown, might be late. I said okay. And that was it. Just the same dance we'd been doing for weeks. But beneath every word, there was a pulse. A tension stretching thinner with every silence. I watched her pour almond milk into her mug, stir with the back of a spoon like she always did. She was wearing that soft gray sweater again, the one with the frayed sleeve. Her hair was damp. Again, always coming back from somewhere clean, somewhere untouchable. She didn't meet my eyes when she walked past me. She hadn't in days. I sat with that for hours after she left. Just the image of her back, her keys jingling, the car pulling out. I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I just sat there and stared at nothing, letting the quiet rot bloom inside me. I thought about the day we moved in, how she'd insisted on painting the kitchen herself, how she picked that god-awful sea glass green that I hated, but smiled about anyway because it made her happy. Now I couldn't look at that color without tasting bitterness. That's what betrayal does. It stains everything retroactively. Even the good memories start to curdle. I called in sick that day. Took the day to unravel. Not dramatically. Quietly. Piece by piece. I made a list of questions I wanted to ask her, typed them in a blank document like I was preparing for a job interview I knew I wasn't getting. When did it start? Did you plan it, or did it just happen? Was it the sex, or the way he made you feel seen? Do you still love me? That one sat on the screen for a long time. Blinking. I couldn't bring myself to add a question mark. Because it wasn't really a question. It was a post-mortem. That night, she came home late. Said traffic was bad. Didn't mention the session. She kissed me on the forehead, something she hadn't done in months. And I felt it for what it was. Guilt. A soft mercy offered to a man she'd already emotionally buried. I followed her into the bedroom. Watched her undress like I always used to. But there was no intimacy in it now. Just choreography. Muscle memory. She turned away from me to change her bra. Always facing the closet. Always guarding her front. That too was new. She used to be so unguarded with me. Laughing, dancing, sometimes naked for no reason except joy. Now her body moved like it didn't belong in this room anymore. That night, I sat beside her in bed and finally asked, "Are you in love with him?" No anger. No theatrics. Just truth. She didn't answer right away. Didn't even pretend to be surprised. She just pulled the blanket up to her chin and stared at the ceiling. "I don't know," she whispered. "I don't think it matters anymore." And just like that, everything we hadn't said out loud came rushing to the surface. The dinners eaten in silence. The soft avoidance. The locked doors. The unplugged phones. The way her laughter had found another home. It all made sense now. And it all hurt worse because of how quietly she'd let it happen. Like watching a slow leak from the ceiling until one day the floor collapses under your feet. I didn't say anything back. What could I say? Come back. She'd never really left in body, but her soul was somewhere else entirely. I forgive you. I wasn't ready. Not even close. I love you. It would have sounded pitiful. So I just lay there, listening to her breathe, wondering how many nights she had slept next to me while dreaming about someone else. She cried softly that night. Thought I didn't hear. I didn't turn to comfort her. I couldn't, because even in her grief, she wasn't crying for me. She was crying for the version of herself she lost, the one that Darren had resurrected. I was just collateral damage in that morning. The man she built a life with now turned ghost inside his own home. And the worst part? I still loved her. That kind of pathetic, loyal love that doesn't know when to let go. That digs its own grave and calls it hope that a week passed. Maybe more. Time got blurry. Days started folding into each other, each one shaped like the last. A long stretch of silence, passing glances, unfinished sentences. She stopped pretending after that night. Stopped making coffee for two. Stopped asking if I needed anything from the store. It was all unspoken now. The shift. The split. The betrayal. She didn't apologize. Not once. Maybe she thought there was nothing left to apologize for. Maybe she believed she had already suffered enough by staying this long. Maybe she convinced herself that staying loyal to a lie was a form of cruelty too. I kept waiting for the explosion. The big confrontation. The screaming match where everything finally came out and we could claw our way through the wreckage like wounded animals. But never came. Instead, it was paper cuts. Little wounds that stung just enough to remind you you're bleeding. A forgotten dinner. A late return. A look that lingered too long on nothing at all. I found myself watching her like an anthropologist observing the rituals of a stranger. She talked differently now. Softer when she was on the phone. Laughed too quickly. Smiled like someone still trying to impress. She started wearing that one necklace again. The silver one with the small charm shaped like a feather. Said it made her feel light. I remember the day I gave it to her years ago when we had just closed on the house. For when things feel heavy, I'd said. I wondered if he knew that. If she told him the story. If she wore it around him, let it catch the light just so, hoping he'd ask. The hardest part wasn't that she cheated. It was that she gave parts of herself to him that used to be mine. Private parts. Secret jokes. Stories. Her stories. The ones she told only when she was in that vulnerable place that required absolute trust. I knew she was talking to him still. Not constantly, but enough. Once, I passed her phone on the table and saw a notification pop up. A message preview. Just 4 words. I miss your thoughts. Not I miss you. Not I miss your touch. Your thoughts. That was intimacy, dressed in polite clothes. I didn't open the message. I didn't need to. I already knew it wasn't new. It was just the first time she forgot to hide it. I started dreaming about her. Not as she was now, but how she used to be. Her head on my chest. Her voice laughing at my terrible impressions. Her hands cold, always finding mine. I'd wake up with tears in my eyes. Not because of the dreams, but because of how much it hurt to realize they were just that. Dreams. Memories dressed up as comfort. Every morning, she'd move around the room like we were roommates. Casual, detached. We barely spoke unless we had to. I started taking walks at night. Long, aimless walks around the neighborhood. Past the same houses, same porches, same lit-up windows filled with other people's happiness. I'd walk until my legs hurt, until I couldn't think anymore. One night, I walked past a cafe on the corner. Saw 2 people sitting outside, laughing. A woman and a man, maybe early 30s. They leaned into each other, so naturally. Not a touch yet. Not romantic, but a closeness. Familiar. Intimate. And for a second, I felt like I was watching her and Darren. Not literally, just a projection. What they must have looked like in those first few conversations. What it feels like to be understood again. To be seen without effort. I wanted to hate her. God, I wanted to. But I couldn't. because I remembered what it was like to feel lonely in the middle of something that looked like love. I remembered how silence can grow between two people like a wall, and how sometimes it feels easier to climb out the window than to try to break through it. But knowing that didn't make the betrayal any easier to swallow. The night it finally happened, it wasn't dramatic. It wasn't a shouted accusation or a caught-in-the-act confrontation. It was quiet, almost gentle. She came into the living room and stood by the doorway, holding a mug of tea. Her face was pale, not sad, just empty. "Can we talk?" she asked. I muted the TV, nodded. She sat on the far end of the couch, knees pulled up. That was her default when she felt vulnerable. She didn't look at me right away, just stared into the mug like it held an answer she wasn't sure how to speak. "I'm not in love with you anymore," she said. No tears, no drama, just truth. Honest, undeniable. The air left my lungs so fast it felt like a punch. I didn't speak. I just stared at her, waiting for more, hoping maybe there was something else. An explanation, a contradiction, something. But she just shook her head slowly. I tried. I really did. But it's been gone for a while, and I didn't know how to say it. And then Darren, it wasn't planned. It just reminded me what it felt like to feel alive again. She looked at me then, finally. Her eyes were wet, but not spilling. "You didn't do anything wrong. You were always kind. Safe. You gave me a beautiful life." But I started feeling like I wasn't in it anymore. I wanted to scream, to throw the mug, to say I was dying inside too, and I still stayed. But I didn't, because something about the way she said it made me realize she wasn't asking for forgiveness. She wasn't even asking for understanding. She was just naming the ending, like calling time of death. We didn't argue. What would we argue about? You can't fight someone into loving you again. You can't debate your way back into their heart. I just nodded, eventually. She cried a little, said she was going to stay with her sister for a while, said we could talk logistics later. She packed a bag that night. I didn't watch her. Couldn't. I sat in the kitchen and stared at the green walls she painted, wondering if I should repaint them or just burn the place down. When the door closed behind her, I didn't feel relief. I didn't feel rage. I felt still, hollow, like something had been cut out of me, but so cleanly I hadn't even started bleeding yet. That's how it ended. Not with a crash, but with a whisper, and the sound of a car pulling away from the curb. In '01 talks about what happens the day after the person you love leaves. Not really. People imagine chaos, tears, broken things, a spiral of self-destruction. But most of it isn't loud. Most of it is painfully still. You wake up and expect the world to look different, but the sun still comes in through the blinds at the same angle. The coffee machine still grinds the beans at the same hour. Your toothbrush is still next to hers. For now, the house doesn't mourn with you. It just goes on, and that's the part that breaks you the most. How the world doesn't stop when your world has ended. The first thing I noticed was the absence of sound. Her footsteps, soft and fast, always moving from room to room. Gone. The subtle clatter of makeup containers in the bathroom. Gone. The scent of her conditioner, her tea, her cinnamon gum, erased from the air like she never lived here. I walked through the house like a stranger in a crime scene, afraid to touch anything, as if moving her things would disturb the ghost of what we used to be. Her sweater was still draped on the back of the couch. The one she wore the night, she told me. I didn't move it. I just sat on the floor in front of it for hours. I don't know why. Maybe part of me thought if I stayed close enough, I'd feel something again. Maybe I thought her scent would hold the parts of her she no longer offered me. It didn't. It was fading. I didn't eat much. I didn't sleep. I existed in fragments. Emails half-written, dishes half-washed, sentences half-finished. Friends texted. A few called. I ignored most of it. What was I going to say? Yeah, she left. Yeah, it's because she was in love with someone who understood her better. Or worse, she left because I was safe. And safety stopped being enough. How do you say that without sounding pathetic? I want to hate her. God, I tried. I scrolled through every memory I could find, trying to reframe them as lies. The trip to Montreal, where we stayed up all night watching old French films. Maybe she was already thinking of someone else. The night we danced barefoot in the living room to Nina Simone. Maybe she was just performing love, not feeling it. I tried to rewrite our history so I could burn it, but I couldn't. because she did love me. I know she did, just not forever. That's the truth no one wants to hear. Love doesn't always die because of betrayal. Sometimes it just erodes, slowly, quietly, until the shore you once built your life on is gone, and you're both left standing in the tide pretending not to drown. On the third day, I started packing her things. Not because I wanted to, but because it hurt more to see them stay. I folded her clothes like I was handling something sacred. Her books went in a box labeled office, even though she hadn't worked from there in months. I found her old journals, leather-bound, pages worn at the corners. I didn't read them. I couldn't. Not because I was noble, but because I was afraid I'd find something beautiful. Something that proved she had been slipping away long before Darren. But I did find one thing. In a nightstand drawer. A postcard. Blank. Except for 4 words scribbled in her handwriting. Maybe we weren't ready. No name. No date. No context. Just that sentence, floating like a confession without a recipient. Maybe she meant it for me. Maybe for herself. Maybe it was never meant to be found. But there it was. Honest. Ambiguous. Unforgiving. I put it back where I found it. I started thinking about the version of me she fell in love with. The man who used to write her poems and leave them on her pillow. The man who once drove 6 hours in a snowstorm just to see her for 2. The man who made her laugh so hard she snorted in front of strangers. Somewhere along the way, I became background noise. Steady, predictable, dependable. And slowly, without meaning to, she stopped hearing me. And I stopped speaking. That's the part people miss. Affairs don't start with touch. They start with silence. With the things we stop saying. The things we assume our partner already knows. With the quiet moments when we reach for each other and find nothing there. I didn't tell anyone the full story. Not even my brother. When he called to check in, I just said she needed something I couldn't give. He paused, then said, "I'm sorry." And that was enough. Because what else is there to say when the thing you gave everything to just walks away? The hardest part wasn't the betrayal. It was the echo. The way her voice still lived in the house. The way my body still moved through rooms expecting to find her. I kept turning off lights she used to leave on. Opening drawers she used to clutter. Touching her side of the bed in the middle of the night like I could still reach her. You don't just lose a person. You lose the map of your life. And suddenly you're wandering a house full of coordinates that no longer lead anywhere. I thought about calling her, just to hear her voice, just to ask how she was sleeping. But I didn't, because I knew what I really wanted wasn't her voice. It was the version of her that no longer existed. And if I called, I'd just be reminded of how far she'd already gone. So I sat in the kitchen, lights off, coffee cold, and let the silence settle like dust. I don't know how long I sat there. An hour, maybe 3. Eventually, I got up, washed a single plate, and opened a new browser tab. I typed, "How do you let go of someone who let go of you first?" There were thousands of answers. None of them helped. I didn't rebuild overnight. This isn't one of those stories where the heartbreak becomes a spiritual awakening in a matter of days. There was no montage, no glowing self-help journey. Just time. And time, contrary to what people say, doesn't heal. It just stretches. It thins out the pain until you forget where it starts and where it ends. Until the ache becomes part of the background hum, like traffic outside your window. You stop noticing it, but it never really goes away. The first Sunday alone, I sat on the front steps drinking coffee from a chipped mug she once bought at a flea market in Asheville. I stared at the street, watching the world carry on. A couple walked by pushing a stroller. A man jogged past with a dog. Somewhere down the block, someone was mowing their lawn. The world didn't pause for my grief. It didn't even glance in my direction. That felt both cruel and fair. She wasn't coming back, and no one owed me a reason to keep waiting. I boxed up the rest of her things 2 weeks after she left. Her sister came by to pick them up. She didn't stay long, just nodded when I handed over the boxes and said, "She asked me to thank you for packing everything." That stung. Not the gratitude, the distance in it. Like we were no longer people who had shared a life, but 2 polite strangers exchanging remnants of a story neither of us wanted to read again. After she left, the house grew louder. Every creak in the floorboard, every faucet drip, every late-night gust of wind knocking against the window. It was like the walls had started talking, reminding me where she used to sit, where she used to laugh, where she used to exist. I started sleeping on a couch. Not because I couldn't sleep in our bed, but because I didn't want to. That bed was built for two, and now it just felt like an accusation. An empty stage where the main act had exited, and I was left pretending the show wasn't over. I got rid of the green paint, painted the kitchen white, not for a fresh start, just because I couldn't stand looking at something she loved. I changed the furniture around, not out of style or comfort, but out of spite. If she ever came back, I didn't want her to feel like she still recognized the place. I wanted her to feel foreign in it the way I felt in my own skin. One night, I got a message from her. Just a single line. "I hope you're okay." I stared at it for hours. Not because I didn't know what to say, but because I knew exactly what I wanted to say, and also that none of it would matter. I wanted to say, "You were my home, and now I don't know how to stop feeling homeless." I wanted to ask, did he love you the way I did? Did he know how you hate pickles, but love pickle juice? Did he know how you talk in your sleep when you're anxious? Did he ever hold your face in both hands and think, "God, how did I get so lucky?" I wanted to scream, to beg, to rage, but I didn't. I typed back, "I will be," and that was the last thing we ever said to each other. I wish I could say that something beautiful came out of this, that I found a new love, that I discovered something extraordinary in myself. But some stories don't have a redemptive arc. Some stories just end, and what you do next isn't a sequel. It's something entirely different. Something smaller, slower, realer. I started reading again, walking more. I stopped checking her social media. I stopped listening to sad music. Not because it stopped hurting, but because I got tired of bleeding for someone who stopped looking back. I met someone a few months later. Just coffee. No sparks, no fireworks. But when she laughed, she touched my arm. Not the way my wife used to. Different. Gentle. And for the first time in a long while, I didn't flinch. Sometimes healing isn't about rebuilding the old house. Sometimes it's just learning to breathe without the roof. Now I water the plants. I answer calls. I make my bed. I smile when the sun hits the hardwood floor just right in the mornings, and I think I'm still here. I survived something that could have swallowed me whole. And when people ask what happened, I say this. I loved her. She left. It broke me. But I'm learning not to stay broken. Some days I still miss her. Not in the desperate way. Just as a fact. Like you might miss a town you grew up in that no longer exists. A smell. A laugh. A life. But missing someone isn't the same as needing them. And love, real love, the kind that lasts, doesn't run when it gets complicated. It stays. It works. It fights. She didn't. But I did. And I still am.